إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري أنه قال عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة، فقلت عليك السلام. قال إني يجد في بدني ضعفا، فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به، فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله، فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء، فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فقال علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ وقال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال: وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء، أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال جبرائيل: يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي ثانيا: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Shali Mubarak to everybody on this joyous occasion of the birth date of our Mawla Imam Ali AS. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. नादे अली जो पढ़ती चली गई, उम्रे रवा सुकून से गुजरती चली गई। नादे अली का विरद जो पढ़ती चली गई, उम्रे रवा सुकून से गुजरती चली गई। जिसने दरे हुसैन पे सर को झुका दिया, जिसने दरे हुसैन को सर पे झुका दिया, वो शख्सियत जहां में उभरती चली गई। मौत आ रही थी देखा जो लब पर अली का नाम, मौत आ रही थी देखा जो लब पर अली का नाम, मुझसे मिले बगैर गुजरती चली गई। ये मौला अली है, ये मौला अली है, ये मौला अली है, ये मौला अली है, ये मौला मौला अली शेरे खुदा ला फता इल्ला अली, ला सैफ इल्ला जुल्फिकार। नारे हैदरी या अली। मुसल्ले पे मैंने अली का कसीदा जो ही गुनगुनाया, सवेरे सवेरे खुदा की कसम फिर इबादत का मुझको बड़ा लुफ्त आया सवेरे सवेरे मुसल्ले पे मैंने अली का कसीदा जो ही गुनगुनाया सवेरे सवेरे मौला तेरा नारा ईमान बराता है मौला तेरा नारा ईमान बराता है नारा है ये कंबर का नारा है ये बूज़र का नारा है ये मीसम का नारा है कलंदर का और दार पे ये नारा तम्मार लगाता है नारा मौला तेरा नारा ईमान बराता है खुशहाली मुबारक एवरीवन खुदा हाफिज़ टेक केयर
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم واكرمنا بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا من خزائن علومك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. My brothers and my sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I congratulate you on this auspicious occasion of the birth of our great Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. This day, one of the most blessed of days, the day in which this man was born, whom if you realize the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi does not begin until he is of a mature age of 10 years old. The Prophet was 40 years old, Imam Ali was 10 years old. There's a 30-year difference between them. Of course, in the year of the elephant, when Rasulullah was born, he was born as a miracle baby. The entire clan of the Banu Hashim crowded around this boy, who, through his birth, the drought in Mecca was ended. And Fatima bint Asad goes to Abu Talib, and she congratulates Abu Talib on the birth of his nephew. Abu Talib is the brother of Abdullah, the father of Rasulullah. She congratulates him on his nephew, on the birth of his nephew. So Abu Talib says to her, "Usbri alayya sabtan atiki bimithlih." Wait, be patient with me for 30 years, and I will bring you one like him. You see, Abu Talib was a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. He knew there was one coming. There was a partner for this young miracle baby to be born. Sabtan, 30 years. Wait 30 years. Of course, when the Prophet is 30 years old, here Fatima bint Asad is pregnant. And she goes and stands outside the Kaaba. And she raises her hands. And she calls on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she says, "Lord, by the one who built this Kaaba, make this pregnancy easy for me. And here, she's speaking to Allah through tawassul of Nabi Ibrahim, who was known as a Muslim. And so they were all monotheists, known as people who were of the path of al-Din al-Hanif, which was known as the monotheists. So she was a monotheist. And Imam Ali alayhi salam's great ancestor Abraham was a monotheist. And here she is asking Allah, by the one who built the house, the one who erected the walls were Abraham and Ismail, to make the pregnancy easy. And sure enough, the walls miraculously open up. And she enters into the Kaaba and it closes. And the people are in a frenzy. And they come to open the doors of the Kaaba with the keys, but the doors will not open. And she stays in there for 3 days as a guest of Allah. And she emerges on the 4th day as the gates open once again with a baby in her hands. This young man who kept his eyes closed, this young baby kept his eyes closed until he was passed into the hands of Rasulullah. And in the hands of the Prophet looks at him, and Imam Ali, for the first time, the baby Ali opens its eyes and looks at the Prophet. And Rasulullah says, he chose me to be the first one to look at, and I chose him to be the one who I gave my knowledge to. And sure enough, Rasulullah took Imam Ali alayhi salam in, and he raised him. He took him off Abu Talib, and he raised the young Ali. He slept with him in the cradle, next to him. He was like his father. Imam Ali tells us of how Rasulullah had raised him. He says, you know my position with Rasulullah. He would sit me on his lap and he would chew the food before feeding it to me. He says, I would follow him in the same way that the baby camel would follow in the footsteps of the mother camel. Everywhere Rasulullah went, sure enough, you'd find the young Ali, age 3, 4, 5, 6, going with him everywhere. Imam Ali alayhi salam would say, every year Rasulullah would go into Ghar Hira. There he would remain in seclusion. I saw the light of revelation and I smelt the fragrance of prophecy, and no one else did except Khadija and I. On those days, it was only those 3. And there, Imam Ali is saying he would see these miraculous events taking place. In our hadith, we see how Imam Ali alayhi salam was a part of that. And he says, every day Rasulullah would teach me so that I would have noble character. That was his teacher. The Prophet Muhammad was Imam Ali's teacher. And he says, I would know that there was an angel guiding him and teaching him. Imam Ali alayhi salam would know that there in front of him, Rasulullah is his teacher, and there was an angel always guarding the Prophet. Imam Ali alayhi salam was raised in this light of prophethood, smelling the fragrance of revelation and prophecy. And so it's no wonder that he is the one who should be the leader, the source of inspiration when it comes to Islam, the spiritual guide of Islam after the Prophet. This was evident for all to see. It did not even need the day of Ghadir. People ask sometimes, why did the Prophet wait until Ghadir to tell us who would be the one to guide the Muslims after himself? We say no, we do not even need Ghadir. We look at the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam as evidence enough. It is evidence enough. From when he was 16 years old was the first time that it was announced. And this is not even a Shi'i hadith. This is a hadith found in both Shi'i and Sunni books known as Hadith Yawm al-Dar. Imam Ali was 16 years old. Here, Rasulullah is told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to tell his near kin, فَانْدِرْ عَشِيرَتِكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. So, Rasulullah gathers his near kin and he begins to speak to them. And he tells them, مَنْ يُؤَازُرُنِي عَلَى هَذَا الْأَمْرِ وَهُوَ أَخِي وَوَصِيِّي وَخَلِيفَتِي مِنْ بَعْدِي. Who is going to be my ambassador? Who is going to be my brother and my Khalifa after me on this path? Who is going to stand up for this? Who is willing to stand? And here Islam is very young. He's only 16 years old. It's only been 6 years of Rasulullah trying to tell the people of Islam. And here he is trying to speak to the Banu Hashim. And the Banu Hashim here, they don't accept. Abu Lahab is laughing at this point, because Imam Ali stands up, a young Ali of 16 years old, and he says, Ana laha ya Rasulullah, it's for me. I am for it, and it is for me. No one else stands up. So the Prophet says, Anta laha ya Ali, Anta akhi wa wasiyi wa khalifati min ba'di. It's for you. And so he says to the people, you must follow him and obey him. And Abu Lahab laughs and looks at Abu Talib, his brother, and says, you must obey your 16-year-old son. And Abu Talib tells him to be quiet. Uskut, be quiet. Because he knows what was coming. But people doubted in those early days. And what we saw after that was the blossoming of the Prophet. The blossoming of Ali alongside the Prophet. Slowly, you saw, if there was any random man that was to come to Medina, as Imam Ali AS through the years was by the Prophet's side, being his advisor, his bodyguard, his general, his flag bearer. If you were to ask any random man, he was there for 2 days, let's say, he would go to Medina for 2 days, you'd ask him, listen, man, who is the guide? Who is in charge after the Prophet? He would say, it's that man right there. It's Ali. It can be no one else other than Ali. It's him, it's obvious. He's the one who takes care of everything. He's the secretary. He's the one who everyone comes to speak to the Prophet. If we were to show someone a masjid, what is more evident of it being a masjid? The fact that it is a masjid, or me telling him, listen, by the way, that's a masjid. Me telling him it's a masjid is one thing, but it being a masjid is self-evident. It's self-evidently a masjid. If you see it, you see the minaret, you see the crescent moon, it's evident that it's a masjid. For me to tell you, it would be way too obvious. But the Prophet told us anyway. He kept telling us again and again and again, through his emotions, through his words, through his character, through his stances. Even we see in our hadith the way in which they had a very personal relationship. How the Prophet Muhammad, if he was sitting down and his knees were cramping up, Imam Ali AS would be the one to come, hold his hand and bring him up. He would be the one to pick him up. Imagine now, I know this might not seem like a big deal to you, but you have to imagine. Imagine a great marja. Imagine Sayyid Sistani, for example, sitting down, and you come, whoever is that comes, and holds his hand and lifts him up. You'd think, okay, that person's very close to him. Someone of that noble character. And then this person comes and deals with him in this way. That's how Imam Ali Islam would be with the Prophet, always by his side in everything that he needed. You see a hadith, a beautiful hadith from Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam. She says that there was once they were at home and she saw that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi was looking sorrowful. He looked sad. And so she asked him, Ya Rasulullah, what's wrong? What is it? And he says, I miss Ali. And subhanAllah, they would have been together earlier in the day because they were together every single day. He told her, I miss Ali. I miss when he's not here. He felt lonely without him. So Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam, this amazing woman, does not feel jealous. Instead, she goes out, she goes into the town in Mecca, looking for Imam Ali alayhi salam. She calls him, Ya Ali, the Prophet is at home and he missed you. He felt a little bit lonely without you. Why don't you come and visit? And the Imam said, of course, the Prophet misses me. And he went. So he and Khadija alayhi salam, they go into the house. And as they enter, Sayyidah Khadija narrates, as they enter, Rasulullah stands up, Imam Ali walks into the house, they approach and they embrace, they hug. And they hug for so long. They stay there, and Sayyidah Khadija says that I would never sit down before Rasulullah. And they hugged for so long that I stayed standing up the whole time they were hugging, that my knees began to ache because she was waiting for them the whole time. We look at how Imam Ali would give everything and sacrifice himself again and again for the Prophet, showing us the way in which we are to follow Islam and give our lives for the Prophet. And of course, several times it was Imam Ali who would sleep in the bed of the Prophet. Several times when it seemed like people were after Rasulullah, they were after him to hurt him, to kill him, to assassinate him in his sleep. Abu Talib, the father of Imam Ali, would be the one who would tell Ali ibn Abi Talib to go and sleep in his bed. That was the sunnah of Abu Talib. Of course, we know that after Abu Talib passes away and after Sayyidah Khadija passes away, that Rasulullah had decided to go on the Hijrah, and slowly the Muslims were leaving Mecca for Medina. The small amount of Muslims that there were after 13 years of da'wah. And on that night, there was a plan by the chiefs of Quraysh that they would appoint someone from every clan to gather outside the house of the Prophet, and for each one of them to take part in the assassination, so that no one would be responsible, not one clan. And of course, Jibreel told Rasulullah about what was happening and told him, tonight is the night that you must leave on Hijrah. And so, the one who would stay as a decoy in the bed of Rasulullah to mislead the assassins was none other than Ali ibn Abi Talib. And when the Prophet had told him this, he told him, Ya Ali, this is going to happen tonight. And the order has come from the heavens. And you are to be the one who sleeps in my bed. And Imam Ali said, tonight is the night, Ya Rasulullah. Tonight I sacrifice my life for you. And here it was very difficult for the both of them. When we tell the story, we tell it like as if they knew exactly what was going to happen. It was very difficult for them. They didn't know when they were going to see each other again. And Rasulullah looks at him with tears in his eyes and hugs him. And Imam Ali is grateful, and he goes into sujood and he cries. He says, Shukran lillah, shukran lillah, shukran lillah. He thanks Allah, he's grateful to be the one chosen to sacrifice his life as a decoy for the Prophet. And so, sure enough, Imam Ali goes into the bed and Rasulullah escaped from the house. Now, the Prophet, on the way, he encounters Abu Bakr, who, by the way, had he gone with the Muslims in the beginning, should have been in Medina already. So we have a question there as to why he is even in town at the moment. There are some hadith that say that he came to the house and he saw Imam Ali and said, where is the Prophet? And he went to meet him. But that doesn't make sense because the house was surrounded. And of course, Rasulullah only escaped the house because of Ayatul Sad. And the people were blinded to him through a miracle. So Rasulullah encounters Abu Bakr on the way. And instead of leaving him there, instead of him being in danger, maybe being caught by the enemy, maybe being interrogated or tortured, Rasulullah takes him. He says, come with me. And they go and they hide in a cave. And the Quraysh now attack the house with Imam Ali in the house. And as they approach, when they lift the covers and the people are around, gathered around, Imam Ali is the one who stands up. And here they are all shocked. They're taking their swords out. Imam Ali takes his sword out. And they're all waiting, looking at each other. And they ask him, where is the Prophet? The Imam says, I don't know where he is. He said, tell us where he is. He said, you told him to leave. And he left. So here, they're at a stalemate. They leave the house immediately. And they go on a search looking for the Prophet. And of course, we know the famous story of the miraculous spider web that covers the cave. So the Quraysh now are misled, not knowing where Rasulullah is. Now, the Prophet is to go off to Medina. He embarks on a long journey. Once again, we have another question because Abu Bakr had 2 camels ready. So he knew what was going on and he wanted to be the one with him. And he had 2 camels ready. Now, what's interesting is the Prophet does not embark on the journey with the camel presented to him by Abu Bakr, except that he pays Abu Bakr for the camel. Which again is interesting because we have to ask the question, when you are in a getaway, when you are in danger and your very trusted companion comes to you to save you, drives, get in the car, let's go. You don't stop and say, hey, how much was the gas money? You get in the car and you go. But Rasulullah is a man of vision. He knows what would be said later on. He knows people will say, Abu Bakr saved him. It was the camel of Abu Bakr that saved Rasulullah. So the Prophet decides that, no, it's my camel. He buys it from him. And they go on this 9 to 10 day journey. But just before they reach Medina, they stop. The Prophet stops and he gets off the camel. And he tells Abu Bakr that he will not go further because he is waiting for the one who sacrificed his life for him. Because Imam Ali AS was to follow with the Fawatim, the 3 Fatimas. Fatima bint Hamza, Fatima bint Muhammad, Fatima AS, and Fatima bint Asad, the mother of Imam Ali AS. He was supposed to come with them afterwards, after everything was sorted out in Medina. Now, Abu Bakr is displeased because he really wants to go into Medina right now with the Prophet. And he urges him and he pleads with him to go in. And the Prophet says, no, I'm waiting for Ali. And once again, here it's very important that we realize the man of vision that the Prophet is. Because if this was the modern day, let's say a newspaper was covering this story and journalists were covering this story, then whoever the Prophet walks into Medina with, as he's starting the new stage of this religion of Islam, in this new society, he's walking, imagine walking in with the camel and then there's a man by his side and then the journalist would take a photograph. It would be a very iconic photo. This photograph would be on the front page of the newspaper. It would be on the front page. It would be an iconic photo we'd see for years on end. Kind of like if you can think back to a very iconic photo of the great Ayatollah Ruhullah Khomeini. When Imam Khomeini descends from that plane for the 1979 revolution in Iran, when the Air France lands and Imam Khomeini is coming down the stairs, that's a very iconic photograph. Everyone knows that photograph. It's in color, it's in black and white. It's a photograph of history. And you notice who is the one holding the hand of Imam Khomeini. Because in that picture are various pillars of the Iranian revolution, very strong and important personalities. Shahid Mutahari is right behind him, and his son is right next to him. But he's not holding the hand of Shahid Mutahari. He's not holding the hand of his son. He's not holding the hand of any other scholar. Why? Because they would say later on, when they'd see that picture, they'd say, that was the next in charge. That man there was going to be the one to be the wali faqih after Imam Khomeini. But Imam Khomeini, a man of vision, as he descends from the plane on the stairs, whose hand is he holding? Whose arm is supporting him? It's the pilot of the Air France. Because he cannot be the wali faqih. And this is how men of vision see the future. They know how people will look back in history. Rasulullah also knows this iconic photograph can be with none other than Ali ibn Abi Talib. And so he waits. Abu Bakr, understandably, gets upset. And he goes into Medina on his own. Rasulullah now waits for Imam Ali. Meanwhile, Imam Ali is in Medina giving out the amanat, the amanas. Rasulullah would be someone in Mecca who people would give their amanas to because he was trusted. And he still had all those amanat to give to the people when he left. So he told Imam Ali, you stay back and you give the amanat to the people. So Imam Ali stays back. Imagine you are the one final Muslim in the whole town in Mecca, and everyone wants your blood, and everyone wants to harm you, and you stand there with no care in the world, and you are calling out to the people for the amanat, and you want to give them their amanat. What bravery, what honor, no fear. In fact, the Imam says, if my enemies were a number which would fill the earth, I would not feel scared or feel lonely. ما بليت ولا توحشت. Then, after he is done with the amanat, Imam Ali gathers the 3 Fatimas. He goes and he buys 3 camels. Only 3. Either there were none left or he had no money to buy a 4th. Now, this was in broad daylight. He was buying the camels for the Fawatim to leave. Here, the man selling the camels, as he was unbuckling the rope, untying the rope, he's doing it very nervously because he knows Quraysh are coming. And he looks at Imam Ali. Imam Ali is telling him, calm down, be calm, it's okay. In broad daylight. And he brings the Fawatim, and they get onto the camel, and Imam Ali leads them outside on foot, and they leave Mecca. They leave Mecca with Imam in front of them and the 3 Fawatim on 3 camels behind him, and he's on foot. Now, when the Quraysh see this, they can't believe their eyes. They feel like he's trying to humiliate them. Is he trying to humiliate us? Is he trying to make a fool out of us? So they gather over 10 warriors and they send them out to stop him. So they go out and they stand right in front of him. They line up in front of him and they tell him, turn back. And the Imam says, I won't turn back. And they said, turn back or we will force you back with your hair. They threaten him, they threaten the Fawatim, they threaten to force all of them to go back by force. And here, of course, the Imam does not accept anyone to threaten him or the Fawatim. If anyone touches any one of the Fatimas, they were going to be ended right there. So they told him, if you don't turn back, we're going to pull you back with your hair, O son without a father. Because his father had died at the time. They were trying to make him angry. Then they run towards him and attack him. The first one that attacks him, Imam Ali strikes. The second one, Imam Ali strikes until they disperse in front of him. To the point that they were so scared to come near him. And they said, stay away from us, son of Abu Talib. Now, Abu Talib, his name is alive. They move away. Here, Imam Ali alayhi salam, for the first time, Sayyidah Fatima watches on. She's young and she watches and she sees how this young man had been defending her and her father. All these years she watched him. All these years she saw him, protecting her, defending her father, stopping the people from throwing the stones. He goes to fight them, the ones who throw the stones, because they were young and he was young. Rasulullah was not going to give his time to these youths. Imam Ali alayhi salam would be the one to go and fight them. That's why later on in the wars, when they'd see him, they say, oh, you're the one that used to twist our faces when we were kids. Because he would stop them from throwing the stones. So the Fatima sees this. Now, Imam Ali alayhi salam also travels, this time on foot, until he gets to the Prophet. Of course, when they reach Rasulullah, Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam runs and embraces her father, but Imam Ali is behind them because he's walking on foot. His feet are bleeding. When Rasulullah sees Ali come, he embraces him and hugs him once again. And they get onto the camel and they come into Medina. And here finally the iconic photograph is taken as they walk in. And the people welcome them as a new stage of Islam descends upon Medina. And one of the first things that the Prophet does in Medina is the pact of brotherhood, ukhuwah. He brings people from different tribes, from the Aus and the Khazraj clans and tribes who were at war. He makes them brothers and he brings them muhajirin They are people of Quraysh that came with him from Mecca, and he makes them into a brotherhood pact with the Aus and the Khazraj. So he'll choose one person from Aus, for example, and make him a brother with a Muhajir. And one person from the Khazraj, brother with a Muhajir. Or someone from the Aus and the Khazraj, brothers together. One for each. Why? The Prophet is trying to remove this tribal tendency from the Arabs. He wants to bring forth this understanding of Islam, that we are brothers in Islam, no matter how we look, no matter our financial status, no matter the color of our skin, no matter our clan or tribe, we are brothers under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he leaves one man. Again, he leaves Ali alone. He is the last one. Over 90 men are in the brotherhood, but Ali has no brother. So Imam Ali Islam, he says, Ya Rasulullah, you've given everyone a brother. Who am I supposed to be a brother with? And Rasulullah says, by the one who created me, I left you last for the sake of myself. Didn't I tell you that you are to me as Harun is to Musa, except there is no prophet after me? Again and again, he would tell him that. He would tell him, you are to me as Harun was to Musa. And sure enough, after 2 years in Medina, here now, Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam was beginning to have many suitors. Many people would come to speak and ask for Sayyidah Fatima's hand. They wanted to marry her. One after the other they would come, of the companions. And Rasulullah would ask Fatima, but she would say no. He would ask Fatima and she would say no. And he would say, it's not in my hands. And it's not his decision to make. And they would become upset. Of course, there were some companions that would tell Imam Ali a.s., go and ask for her hand. And here's the beauty of Ali, this young warrior, courageous, brave, and honorable, was also very shy. So he thought, how can I go and ask the Prophet for Fatima's hand? But sure enough, eventually he went to do it. And the first day he comes towards Rasulullah, he enters his presence. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. And so the Prophet says, wa alaykum assalam ya Ali. And the Imam stands there. He's shy. He stays silent. And then he says goodbye and leaves. The second day, the Imam comes again. Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Wa alaykum assalam ya Ali. And he stays and he waits. He can't seem to get it out. He's very shy. This is an honorable shyness. And he leaves once again. The third day he comes, Salamu alayka ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet replies, Wa alayka salam ya Ali. Ya Ali, are you trying to ask for Fatima's hand? And the Imam says, nah, yes I am. He says, okay, what do you have for her mahar, for her dowry? And the Imam says, I don't have anything, Ya Rasulullah. And he says, where's the shield I gave you? He says, I have it. He says, that can be the mahar. And so he goes and asks Fatima. He says, Ali is asking for your hand. What do you say? And here, for once, she stays silent. Every other time she denied, but here she stayed silent. And this silence was understood as her acceptance. And Jibreel had told the Prophet, Fatima and Ali are already married in the heavens. Now it's time for you to marry them on earth. And of course now, this marriage of the heavens takes place to bring forth the progeny of Rasulullah, Al-Hassan al-Hussein alayhum salam. No one else had the honor of marrying Fatima. Only Ali, because he was the only worthy kufu, the only worthy companion to Fatima. Had Ali not been born, Fatima could never be married. Now, after their marriage, we find the battles take place. Even before their marriage, battles took place. But here we see another aspect of the personality of Imam Ali. The aspect of futuwa, of the chivalrous knight, the brave warrior. La fata illa Ali, wa la sayfa illa dhul fiqar. There is no young warrior except Ali, and no sword except Dhul Fiqar, the sword the Prophet had given him. And we see battle after battle. In Badr, when the Muslims were outnumbered, how Imam Ali alayhi salam on that day killed 35 men from the enemy camp. In Uhud, when the Muslims ran away disgracefully, we have a hadith that people ran until they reached the Red Sea. Because at the time, some Muslims had disobeyed the order of the Prophet and they became arrogant. And so they thought that they had won the battle, but instead, because they disobeyed him and went against the military objectives, the Prophet was now surrounded by Khalid ibn Walid and his group on their own, on one side of the battlefield. Meanwhile, the uncle of the Prophet, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, this great warrior and very respected personality, was on the other side of the battlefield fighting, but he was killed by Wahshi and Hind. Hind, who had put a price on the head of Hamza. And so Hamza was killed on the battlefield and his liver was eaten. And here, people saw Hamza, this great leader of the Muslims, being killed. And the objectives were lost and the Prophet was nowhere to be found because he was surrounded. So people began to scream, Qutila Muhammad, Qutila Muhammad. Muhammad has been killed. Muhammad has been killed. And then the Muslims began to run left, right, and center. They began to run. They began to run left, right, and center. And there was dust and blood everywhere. And it was a massacre. And it was chaos. People running in all directions. Now here is when we look at the stance of Amir al-Mu'mineen and what he says. Because he looks and he says, I looked around me on that day. And I saw that Rasulullah would never run away. I was looking for him. I couldn't find him, but I know he would never run away. And he couldn't be of the dead because there's a divine promise. So look at his logical conclusion. Look at what he believes happened. He says, Rasulullah would never run away and he cannot be killed in this battle because there's a promise and it hasn't happened yet. So he says, there is no choice for me to believe except that he has been raised into the heavens just like Isa ibn Maryam, like Jesus Christ, the son of Mary. And so he fights. He fights. He doesn't know where the Prophet is, but he takes his sword out. He does his taklif, his objective at the time for Allah. He fights off the warriors looking for the Prophet. He fights and fights until finally he reaches the group where the Prophet is fighting on his own. And the Prophet sees him. And they come back together. And the Prophet says, where is everyone, Ya Ali? And the Imam says, قَدْ كَفَرُوا. They disbelieved and they left. They left us, Ya Rasulullah. And the Prophet says, وَأَنْتَ Ya Ali, and you? And then my Imam says, Ya Rasulullah, I would never run. And they stand there. And as the enemy approached, the Prophet says, here, Ya Ali. And the Imam takes his sword out and they begin to fight. Back to back against the enemies. The horses could not penetrate their defense. They were surrounded. And as the Muslims looked and saw that the Imam and the Prophet were standing their ground, and the Prophet would call them back and he'd hold the sword up. Man li hadha sayf. He would call out, who wants this sword? And the Muslims began to come back slowly to make a stand with them. And they reignited the passion in the Muslims and reassembled their defense lines until the Quraysh were on one side and the Muslims were on the other. And the Quraysh would have to go back to Mecca without having achieved their goals. Now, people say that this was a loss on the side of the Muslims. And yes, they had lost many lives. However, the Quraysh did not achieve the objectives. So it was not a loss of war. The Quraysh did not achieve victory. And they went back. The courage of Ali on that day saved the Muslims. That was in Uhud. We see in Khandaq another side of Ali. As he's fighting Amr ibn Abdul Wid, the greatest warrior in Arabia, and everyone else was scared to fight him. No one else would stand. And the Imam fights him, and the Imam strikes him until he falls. And just before he deals him the final blow, Amr spits at him and curses his mother. And here the Imam is angry, so he stops himself. This legendary story where the Imam stops himself and holds his anger. Think about this for a moment. The greatest warrior is not the one who is angered and is violent. The greatest warrior is the one who does jihad of his soul, of his nafs, who fights the diseases of the heart and the inner temptations. The Imam in that moment showed us what chivalry meant. I do not kill out of anger. I do not kill out of personal desire and revenge. I kill only for what's right and for justice. And so when he calmed down and he reached once again his equilibrium, then he dealt Amr the final blow only for Allah. In Khaybar, we see how everyone failed to go and fight the Jews in Khaybar and take their castle because of the man named Marhab who was killing every battalion that the Prophet sent forward, until the Prophet says, tomorrow I will give the flag to a man who Allah and his Prophet love, and he loves Allah and his Prophet. Here Imam Ali was not part of the battle because he had a sickness in his eyes. He was blinded. Until everyone was asking who is going to be the man who receives the flag. And this time finally Ali's not there. So they thought maybe it's going to be one of us. But on that day, the Prophet calls for Imam Ali AS, and they bring him. He was making bread for them. And he takes his saliva and wipes it onto the eyes of Ali, and Ali can open them and see. And then he gives him the flag. And he says, Ya Ali, I send you into this battlefield. And sure enough, the Imam goes into the battle. And this is after, it was after this battle that the Imam's name becomes famous in Arabia. Because it's in this battle that he goes, stands in the face of Marhab and says, I am the one whose mother named him Haydar, the lion. And Marhab had been told of a prophecy where he would be killed by the one named Haydar. And sure enough, Imam Ali AS also dealt Marhab his final blow. And on that day, lifted the gate of Khaybar, which usually takes several men to lift. He lifted it with one hand, used it as a shield, as witnesses saw and testified. And he became a legend amongst the Arabs. Never losing a battle, yet never claiming victory except once in his life. And he only claims victory when he receives a blow on his head whilst he does sujood. It was the blow which gave him his death. Only then did Ali ibn Abi Talib claim victory as he called out, Fiztu Rabbil Kaaba. Only then. He calls out victory only once, and it was at his death. This is the personality of Ali, who even Muawiyah, his arch nemesis, writes in a letter to Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. He says, Ali in the time of the Prophet was like the stars in the sky, no one could reach him. كالنجوم في السماء لا يطاق. No one could reach him. Muawiyah is saying it. His enemy respects him. And so on that day of Ghadir, when the Prophet raises his hands and says, Man kuntu mawla, fahada Ali mawla. He is the master of everyone who I am the master of. Of course. It's self-evident and it only makes sense. And we thank Allah and we are grateful to be of the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, who in his later years, when he is old, when everyone had left him and he had a grey beard, he stands in the masjid of Kufa. And a man named Nawf narrates the hadith where he says, I see Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he was standing, looking into the sky, as if he was searching for someone, yearning for someone, missing someone amongst the stars. And he began to speak. He says, Nawf, are you asleep or are you awake? Nawf says, I'm awake, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. What is it? Tell me. So the Imam says, Ya Nawf, Tuba lizzahidina fi dunya, al-raghibina fil akhirah. He says, glad tidings be to those who move away from this world and move towards the next. The Imam speaks about certain people who are not yet born and says, I wish I can meet them. How I yearn to meet them. Do you know what that means, my brothers and my sisters? It means that the Imam could be talking about you. It's very possible that you could be someone the Imam was yearning to meet, depending on how you live your life generations later. He waited for those generations later. He talked about them. May we be of those stars that the Imam was yearning for, that he was looking for. And we are thankful and grateful to Allah for being on the path of love towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. Alhamdulillah ala ni'mat al-Islam wa ni'mat al-Wilaya wa kafa biha nama. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
My dearest elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. On this grand night celebrating the Wiladat Imam Ali, on behalf of the entire management committee and our families, we'd like to extend a Kushali Mubarak to each of you and your families. Just bear with me tonight. It's been a while since I've addressed the community. I just want to cover a few topics, inshallah. I'm going to get this just very quickly. And then we have a special guest reciter this evening who prepared some qasidas for us. So very quickly, on this grand night, I'm pleased to announce, and I'm sure many of you have seen in the news article last week, that plans for our proposed project have been approved by the township. So there are a lot of changes and things that have happened since we last all gathered. One of the biggest detractors to this project has been COVID. As you know, we met towards the end of 2019, and at the beginning of last year, everything shut down and came to a halt with COVID. But in a way, that was a blessing because we did get time to revisit, hear some of the requests, and see what was possible. And so, inshallah, we're looking forward very soon. There's just a couple more items that we have to address on our side. We'll be having a meeting, obviously, before we do anything. Plans are to begin soon, and you'll see some of the reasons why we need to begin soon. But we will meet with the community and we'll share all the plans with you. Right now, we're trying to align everything with our AGM schedule. Right now, we are a little bit backed up on the financials. Will be a delay from the accountants to get that to us. So we're going to align everything, hopefully by the end of March timeframe, and schedule a meeting to cover all these topics. One of the key drivers for some of the changes that you're going to see, and obviously to even do this project in the first place, has been some of the issues that we've been having at our center. With the leaks, outgrown our madrasa, some of our space requirements for our elders, particularly our ladies, we've kind of outgrown. So these are the things that we're trying to address, and again, see what is and what can be. And as you can see, the approvals so far are in our favor. And like I said, we'll share the plans soon. Now, one of the things I do want to share with you tonight, there's a lot of talk about the conditions of the mosque, and we are having issues at the mosque with this winter, particularly. And as you know, I've mentioned it before, we've had a lot of issues, as you've seen, being at the center with our roofs. So just very quickly, I want to share, there is an urgency, obviously, to get this project started because of some of the issues that we're having. So I'm just going to quickly share some pictures of the mosque. These are not going to be easy to look at. They're hard for us when we're there, and we're there each and every other, pretty much every day or every other day, cleaning up and making sure things are taken care of at the center. But I just want to share with you some of the items that we are dealing with at the center at this time. So bear with me 1 second. I'll bring up pictures. So as you know, we've had issues with our roof. And again, we're trying to expedite the start of this work so we can address them. But with this winter, we have had a lot of issues with our roof. Actually, even before that, we had some issues starting late fall with all the rain that we had. We had some issues with the roof. A lot of the problems are related to the dome being damaged. There's a lot of porous areas on the dome. There are cracks. We did spend a few $1,000s to get the issue fixed, but it's not holding up. It's going to require some extensive work. But just to show you what's going on at the center, we have several leaks. So you can see on the upper right, this has been a common issue for years, year in, year out. We have to consistently get the area in the men's multi-purpose room fixed. But the pictures below are the pictures of the ladies' hall. We have some very serious leaking now. It's coming from the roof. You can see we have tarp and collecting water. We have to go there pretty much every other day to empty everything out. Where it's the worst is in the men's hall. Again, with the dome leaking and water coming through the dome, there's some extensive damage now in the men's hall, which at this point, what we need to start soon in terms of the overall, project. So right now we're just in care of it. But there are multiple leaks now in the men's hall, above the chandelier, above the member. You can see her on the right-hand side. And again, we have several buckets and pots in place to collect it. One of the new areas where we're starting to see water come through is above the zari. So one of the things we discussed today with our team is we need to find a way to protect the zari and make sure it doesn't get damaged if any additional water comes down. May reach out to some members of the community to help, some volunteers. I don't think this is something we can move, so most likely we'll have to find some protective means to make sure there's no damage to our zari. So again, I just wanted to just quickly share that with you. We are there, like I said, every other day. We maintain the mosque. It gets cleaned every month. Constantly there checking on things. We first run our programs from there, but right now with all the leaks and things and locations that they're at, we cannot do that as far as running these virtual programs. The biggest issue, though, for our community continues to be COVID. All right, so that's one of the things that I just want to quickly address. The COVID virus has really affected us or impacted our community here in the last 2-3 weeks at a level that I've not seen. Again, I'm close in monitoring. I get feedback of certain families and individuals who get sick. But in the last 2-3 weeks, it's hit our community pretty hard. We've had several hospitalizations. About 25 plus people have been infected with the virus. So again, even though we're starting to see some of the effects, you hear the news, the viruses, the numbers are coming down. Within our community, though, it's been really hitting us hard the last couple of weeks. Most of the people that I'm aware were in the hospital are at home recovering, and we pray for your speedy recovery. And as well, we pray that we're all kept safe, from this virus. Other communities, unfortunately, have not fared as well. With some of the severities of the complications from the virus. I think here, multiple families and individuals have got it, but we've, not suffered some of the extreme impacts of the virus. So alhamdulillah, I'm glad everybody, and hope everybody continues to be safe. Now, one of the things I just want to mention, as you know, we're encouraging, everyone's encouraged to go get the virus, and particularly our elders and those who have, some health issues. So I know getting some of the virus, we were going to announce some of the links that were available to sign in and get an appointment. What I've learned just today is that there is a way to get through, at least through the Allentown Health Bureau. I got some information from some community members, told some of my family members, and I want to just share with everybody that the Allentown Health Bureau, if you call them, there is a good likelihood you're able to get an appointment. So if anybody needs help especially our elders who may not access to computers or in dealing with the health authorities. Some of our committee members, Sisters Zainab Waji, Sisters Tanvir Wali, myself and Ali and others are willing to help out. So just reach out to us. If you need help making those appointments, we're happy to help. As well, CVS, as of today, is also starting to administer vaccines through their pharmacies. At this point, none of the Lehigh Valley sites are on the list, but please check it out each day. Just go to the CVS site. You'll see Pennsylvania is now one of the states that the vaccine is being rolled out through their stores, as well as some of the other local shopping centers, Weiss, and I know Rite Aid, and others are doing this as well. But again, if you need any assistance, again, reaching out to anybody, especially our elders who may not be computer savvy or may need help with, getting the appointments, we're at your service. Just let us know, and we're happy to coordinate and help you schedule those. The other big topic related to COVID, I get asked this often again, is when are we opening? And again, just again, to maintain the safeties of our community, especially our elders. And again, in light of what I just told you earlier, with many of our community members getting infected, a lot of it is asymptomatic as well, which is how others in the household are getting infected. We're going to continue to stay in this mode and just be taking the more cautious approach. I think it's better for all of us, and just kind of time when most of us get our vaccines. And again, we'd like to get back to live sessions. Believe me, this last year has been a challenge. Running these virtual programs are not as easy as running the live programs. There's a lot more coordination and things that have to happen during the program. It's a lot of it you don't see. A lot of it's behind the scenes, the technical issues and all that. We've been lucky, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to put these programs together. And I want to thank all that have been helpful, in making these programs successful over the last year. I also want to commend the Ladies Committee and all the volunteers that have helped out with putting these ladies programs together. I think that's been a huge success story, and as well as our youth who've stepped up and helped put some, interesting programming together to bring families in the community together during the last year. And then one group particularly that probably does not get much recognition, I want to make sure we do recognize them. And I would ask for a response from the crowd, but unfortunately there's no interaction through this medium right now. But that's our healthcare workers. We have many members of our community who are doctors, pharmacists, work in hospitals, nurses, teachers, individuals that work in retail settings. Really, want to thank you for all that you do. You are the heroes. I mean, it's because of all of you that our lives, are able to carry on. So again, I want to thank you on behalf of all the community for your dedication to your profession and what you do for the public at large. Now, back to the topic of opening. And I mentioned this many times, I want to open the mosque and get back to live programming as soon as possible. But the right window has to open, right? I would never come to you and tell you we're going to do this and then say, oh, sorry, we can't do it. We want to make sure we can commit to it. So what I'm about to tell you is really what is our current plans for the future. Immediately right now, we are targeting, just based on the environment, the vaccine rollout has been a little bit, it's been lagging. We want to make sure that when we do come back to live settings, that it is safe. So we are targeting the second half of Ramadan at this stage as a possibility of having live programming, similar to what we did in Muharram. If trends keep going the way they are minimally, we'll be able to do an outdoor program similar to what we did in the Muharram timeframe. And if, again, things improve rapidly over the next 2 months, the start of Ramadan is expected to be the middle of April. So again, the first or second half would be the start of May. So again, if things progress in a way that we can have indoor sessions, we'll look at those options as well. But right now, that's the earliest time frame, the second half of Ramadan, where we're thinking we can possibly have programming where we can all come together in a live setting. Last week, I also had the privilege of meeting with the Madrasa administration and the teachers, shared some of the plans, not just for the building, but as well set the expectation Right now, based on how things are trending and the forecast for everyone to be fully vaccinated, or the majority of the population be fully vaccinated by the end of summer, expect to be back, or we're looking to be back in a classroom, inshallah, by September. So again, back to live classroom setting in September is really what the goal is. But again, things can change. So as we, again, assess the information, see the actual circumstances, then and only then will we commit to what we will do. So again, please be patient. I know it's been difficult for many of us. We're anxious to get back, but again, it has to be under the right environment. And again, the primary driver is everyone's safety. The next topic I want to mention is there's a lot to discuss. And I know there are questions. I do get a chance to speak to many of you. I know many of you reach out to me for some questions, but again, many may not have that, may not feel comfortable or whatnot, and that I understand that. So I'm planning to have a town hall to address multiple things. One, obviously, is going to be COVID. What our next steps are. When we've done these town halls, we've always brought in some, guest speakers or professionals to kind of address some of the things that I am kind of getting, feedback that, are maybe issues we need to address in the community. Again, with COVID still, disrupting many of our lives, or, changing some of the ways we do things, especially our children. That's going to be the focus of the next town hall. So we will have that, as well as an open forum where if there's any questions for management related to, opening or anything, community related, we'll do our best to answer those questions at the town hall. I'm not going to get into each of these tonight. There's a couple of initiatives that we're working on. One that I asked for your help. So I had an interesting conversation with an individual who helps many organizations here in the Lehigh Valley. And there's a need at one of the shelters for specific request was for women's boots and sneakers. So we went out and were able to purchase $1,000 worth of boots and sneakers, about 50 pairs. We had a good deal at the Nordstrom rack. We want to make sure that what we're donating is something nice. So we're able to actually get 50 pairs for around $1,000. Those were just received in the last day or two, and we're making a delivery to the shelter. But what I'd like to do is, as a community, see if we can get that to at least 100 pairs. So what I'm asking tonight, if you can and are able, if you can please donate. We're not collecting used or any items at this point. Again, we don't have a proper collection mechanism right now with COVID, everything, with the mosque being closed. What we are asking for is if you can donate, some funds to help with this cost. Again, we're targeting another $1,000. If we get more, we're going to buy more and deliver more. The initial delivery, we're probably going to make sometime in the next 2-3 days. And that's why I'd like to make a subsequent delivery based on the funds collected, to help this organization out. As well, there's some other initiatives to help the local community out as well that we'll talk about. 3 more items, and then I will get to our guest reciter with the Qasida. So there are a couple of new programs that we're going to announce. I'll spend more time in details talking about this at the town hall. As well, there's things that we want to get started right away. 2 efforts that we want to get started right away that I'm going to send a detailed email. Please review that, and then again, we'll talk about that at the town hall or some other subsequent meeting. One of the things I mentioned at the last AGM or at one of my previous addresses to the community was about developing our youth leadership. We want to make sure that our young, students and our youth overall are prepped for success, not just running the Jamaat. Most of folks that have worked on the Jamaat, it's enhanced our ability as well in our workplace in terms of how we lead, how we communicate, how we organize, how we do things. So I want to make sure that we're giving that to our youth here as well. So there's a new program that we're going to be launching. It's called the Youth Ambassador Program and Youth Council. A youth ambassador is individuals who be an appointed youth that we'll communicate with and make sure that the commitment is solid. Oftentimes we get volunteers, things fall through. This is a commitment. We're looking for youth ambassadors who can commit 2 to 4 hours per week, and through that process there'll be things that they'll learn. We'll introduce them to other leaders across not just our community but other communities as well through different programs. Interactions we'll have them join some of the meetings that we have, for example, with Nasimco, Mainstay Foundation, I want them involved. We want them involved in our planning sessions, and as well want to start empowering youth to start developing their programs. And then we're looking at least once a month on a Thursday where the programs are youth driven. So again, they get that experience of running the program. And again, these are things, and I'll ask them to read books and do other things during this time, as well as some of the other speakers and mentors that we have planned will guide the youth, and this will help them not just in obviously community work, but more importantly, it's more about who they become as individuals, and as well how they progress through their careers and in life in general. So look out for that. I'm very excited about this program, and as well the initial youth ambassadors. We're in the process of engaging them now. These are individuals that have helped us this last year and a half, as well as we've seen very active in our community. So I want to give them obviously the first shot at becoming these youth ambassadors, but all the youth will be available to participate in the youth council, which I'll talk about as well. They'll be given the same access to some of the resources and things and the mentors that we're bringing forward. The other project that's table for tonight, I won't get into too much details, and you won't hear about this till the town hall, and more details will be given at the AGM, is our burial assistance program. I know we've tried that here before, but I think it's something that is very important for our community. We need to revisit it and really prioritize that. And I won't speak more about that tonight, but that's another initiative that's at the top of our priorities for this year. And then lastly, we're going to be doing a community census. So a lot of our information is not to date. Email addresses, phone numbers, addresses, and as well, just from planning purposes, really how large is the community. So we're going to be putting out information through email where we want information to be collected. This is not just for our subscribing members. This is for our community as a whole. We just want to again make sure that we are, we have the right resources, we have the right space in our classrooms, and as well other planning aspects of the community. It's very important information. So please look out for the email, and there'll be more details on that program as well coming up. So again, wish each of you and your respected families, Kushali Mubarak. This is a grand occasion. Again, looking forward again to being all together under one roof for our programming instead of our homes. But in the meantime, we'll move on. We have a special guest reciter who prepared a recording from us from Pakistan, a young man who is quite special, quite humble. Inshallah, we'll have an opportunity to bring him here as well. But please enjoy the rest of the program.
औज़ुबिल्लाहिमिनश्शैतानिर्रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहिल्लज़ी जअलना मिनल मुतमस्सिकीन बिविलायती सय्यिदी व मौलाई अमीरुल मुमिनीन अली इब्न अबी तालिब सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि। अस्सलामु अलैकुम जमीअन व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। मेरी तरफ से आप सबको माह रजब विलादत अमीरुल मोमिनीन की बहुत बहुत मुबारकबाद, और थैंक यू वेरी मच ब्रदर अमीन फॉर इनवाइटिंग मी। अल्लाह आप सबको, हम सबको रोज़ा अमीरुल मोमिनीन अली इब्न अबी तालिब की ज़ियारत नसीब फरमाए इंशाअल्लाह वेरी सून। एक मनक़बत से कुछ शेर पेश खिदमत करके फिर इंशाअल्लाह कुछ अहकामात है उसकी भी तकमील करूँगा। एक बार मिलकर बावाज़ बुलंद सलावत पढ़ दें। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुस तेरे अपना कोई सहारा नहीं, तेरा दर छोड़ कर जाए आखिर कहाँ, गैर का दर जबी को गवारा नहीं। जो अली का नहीं वो नबी का नहीं, जो नबी का नहीं वो खुदा का नहीं। जो अली का नहीं वो नबी का नहीं, जो नबी का नहीं वो खुदा का नहीं। है मुसलमान असहाब से पूछिए, क्या ये खुम्मे नबी ने पुकारा नहीं। मिलके नारा हैदरी। है मुसलमान असहाब से पूछिए, क्या ये खुम्मे नबी ने पुकारा नहीं। और वो तो कम सर्फ है जो तुझे छोड़ दे, वो तो कम सर्फ है जो तुझे छोड़ दे। वरना मौला अली तेरी ताजीम को जो पलट कर ना आए वो सूरज नहीं। जो न चौखट को चूमे वो तारा नहीं। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुस तेरे अपना कोई सहारा नहीं। और पहले पहले तारीख खैबर की पढ़ लीजिए, पहले तारीख खैबर की पढ़ लीजिए, फिर कोई आखिरी फैसला कीजिए। पहले तारीख खैबर की पढ़ लीजिए, फिर कोई आखिरी फैसला दीजिए। या ये कहना पैगंबर भी है बिदअती, या ये कहना अली को पुकारा नहीं। तेरा दर छोड़ कर जाए आखिर कहाँ, गैर का दर जबी को गवारा नहीं। और क्यों मुसलमान हवादिस से डरता है तू, तेरे रहबर है 14 जरा गौर कर। एक मैसेज है। क्यों मुसलमान हवादिस से डरता है तू, तेरे रहबर है 14 जरा गौर कर। जी रहे हैं जमाने में वो लोग भी, जिनका कोई भी सच्चा सहारा नहीं। तेरा दर छोड़ कर जाए आखिर कहाँ, गैर का दर जबी को गवारा नहीं। सल्लु अला मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद, अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद। एक कलाम को मुझे हुक्म दिया गया, उससे कुछ शेर पेश करूँगा। वो नूर जिसको शहे मशरक़ैन कहते हैं, उसी को नूर खुदा नूर ऐन कहते हैं। बिखर गया बिखर गया जो वही नूर कायनात बना, बिखर गया जो वही नूर कायनात बना, सिमट गया तो उसी को हुसैन कहते हैं। बल्कि नारा हैदरी, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। ये हमारी किस्मत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। शेर देखिएगा, हम नबी के आशिक हैं, हम अली के दीवाने, हम नबी के आशिक हैं, हम अली के दीवाने, और हसन से निस्बत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। और ये शेर आपने सुनना है, महसूस करना है कि हम हुसैन वाले क्यों हैं, हमारी क्या मंजिलत है। शेर पेश कर रहा हूँ, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हमसे फातिमा ज़हरा, हमसे फातिमा ज़हरा कर चुकी है एक वादा, हमसे फातिमा ज़हरा कर चुकी है एक वादा, अब हमारी जन्नत है, क्यों हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। और हम बताते दुनिया को, हमसे पूछती दुनिया, हम बताते दुनिया को, हमसे पूछती दुनिया, गम में कितनी लज्जत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। इस कलाम को मक्ता इस दुआ के साथ इंशाअल्लाह। चाहे गम जहाँ भी हो, करबला ही में अज़मी, चाहे गम जहाँ भी हो, करबला ही में अज़मी, मुस्तकिल सुकूनत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। नारे हैदरी हैदरी। चले आखिर में माह रजब है, एक कलाम से मैं इख्तिताम करूँगा और आप मोमिनीन से गुजारिश है कि पूरी क़ुव्वत के साथ बुलंद आवाज़ में मेरे साथ इस कलाम में शरीक हो, इंशाअल्लाह मज़ा आएगा सुनने में। हाँ, हैदर 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 Haydar, 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 Haydar. अली दम है आदम का, मसीहा का है मसीहा, कभी लहने दाऊदी अली मौला का लहजा, कभी मूसा की हैबत में अली अल्लाह का मज़हर, मशीयत की ज़बां है हैदर. ये हैदर आप सबने बोलना है. You all have to recite Haidar with me. मशीयत की ज़बां है, शरीयत की यज़ा है, अली वजह जगह है, आया होकर निगाह है, अली मौला है रहबर. हैदर, 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 हैदर. नबी ने खुम में बोला, नबी ने खुम में बोला, अली मन कुन तो मौला. खुदा कमल तू कहकर हुआ कुछ ऐसे गोया, मुकम्मल दी हुआ मेरा मिला है दीन को रहबर. लगे हैदर के नारे अली मौला हमारे, तो कुछ किस्मत के मारे ये मजबूरन पुकारे, हमारा भी गसरवर. हैदर, 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 मिलके हैदर, 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 हैदर. और ये शेर अपने तमाम बुजुर्गों के लिए, अपने पेरेंट्स के लिए, खुसूसन अपनी मदर के लिए. हैदर, हैदर. मुझे घुट्टी में पिलाई है माने ना दे हैदर, मुकाबिल मेरे आदा लरजते हैं सब थर थर, चुराते हैं नजर दौरे रवा के मरहबो अंतर. ये सब शुक्र खुदा है, हशम जो ये मिला है, मेरे दिल में विला है, निगाहों में वफा है, अली का हूँ मैं नौकर. हैदर, 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 हैदर. और कलाम का आखिरी शेर इस माह का वास्ता देके इस दुआ के साथ इंशाअल्लाह सबको ये मंजर देखना नसीब हो. हैदर, हैदर. समात मेरी जिंदा इसी है एक सदा पर, समात मेरी जिंदा इसी है एक सदा पर. कोई ये मुझसे कह दे जियारत कर जी भर कर, वो देखो सामने पर्दा उठा कर आ गए हैदर, वो देखो सामने पर्दा उठा कर आ गए हैदर. अली का जो अली है वो मेहदी जो वली है, जो अव्वल आखिरी है उसी की खुसरवी है, वो है ज़हरा का दिलबर. हैदर, 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 हैदर. बराए खुशनुदी अमीर अल-मोमिनीन बसदाए बुलंद सलावत. अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद वअज्जिल फरज.
अफ़ज़लुस सलाम वस्सलाम अलैका या रसूलल्लाह मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मुहम्मद. रहे ज़ुबां शियाना दे अली रहे शियाना दे अली परे मुशिदों के लो मदद अली रहे शियाना दे अली रहे शियाना दे अली बड़े मुश्किल तो के दो मदद आई अली का नाम भी नाम खुदा राह से है अली का नाम भी नाम से सिफला है अली का नाम भी नाम खुदा से गेजा है लिया नाम अली तो बला सब तरी अर्शे आज़म पे नाम अली बड़े मुश्किल तो के दो शियाना दे अली शियाना दे अली बड़े मुश्किल तो के दो मदद अली के नाम से दोनों जहां में इज्जत है अली का जिक्र है खालिक की इताअत है अली के नाम से गमगीन दिलों को फरहत है करो हाथ से दुआ तो बना में अली होगी हाजत रवा तो बना में अली परे मुश्किल तो पे तो बदल अली शियाना दे अली शियाना दे अली बड़े मुश्किल तो के दो बदल इलाही वास्ता तुझको मोहम्मद मुस्तफा का इलाही वास्ता तुझको ये मुर्तज़ा का इलाही वास्ता हसनैन का और फातिमा का रहे ईमान हमारे सलामत सदा मोमिनों को न हो कोई रंजो या परे मुश्किल तो तेरो मदद बेदे सुबह शियाना दे अली बेदे सुबह शियाना दे अली परे मुश्किल तो तेरो मदद अली के नाम से हो मुस्तजाब सबकी दुआ जो है बीमार में उन्हें जल्दी हो शिफा क़याफ़त में जो है या रब उन्हें कर दे रिहा तेरी ज़ात है पाक खफी ओ जली हो कबूल हमारी दुआए दिली बड़े मुश्किल तो कह दो मगर यारी जुबाशियाना दे अली जुबाशियाना दे अली बड़े मुश्किल तो कह दो मगर यारी इलाही हो जहाँ में नूर रहमत का वफूर महजिए मौजूद का होवे जहाँ में जल्द ज़हूर हो अलमा अब्बास का जल्द नुमाया रब्बे गफूर हाथ पैरा के माँ दूरे कर दे दुआया अलियो शफी मेरे रब्बे जरा बड़े मुश्किल तो कह दो मदद अली जुबाशियाना दे अली जुबाशियाना दे अली बड़े मुश्किल तो कह दो मदद अली बियाए मुहम्मद कोई सवाबु वफिया बिया नज़रत किताबु बियाले मुहम्मद इलाहे आया बराया बेहिम व बेसात देहिम आयो तयाबु बियाली मुहम्मदिन उरिफा सवाबु व बेमर्तबतन तुहाबु बियाई मुहम्मदिन उरिफा सवाबु वफिया बियातिहिम नज़रत किताबु अलियुन दूर वज़ाबिल मुसफ़्फ़ा वबाक़िना कुल्लुहुम तुराबु बियाली मुहम्मदिन उरिफा सवाबु عليك يا رسول الله محمد وآل محمد صلوات صلوا على محمد. Let's recite dua Shufai Marid wa Yasabala. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كل وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائلا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المأسومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان سيدي الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد